og da tror jeg rett og slett vi kan si velkommen til Steven Henry Maddix. I forgot we were going to do this in English. And that's okay. Welcome, Steven Henry Maddix.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you for being here. You were the co-founder and co-owner of Husbonden, right?
That is correct, yeah.
Yeah. For those who have read the show notes for today, you would have seen that this is about mushrooms, medicinal and for food and other purposes that we will talk about. So please, Steven, you can introduce yourself and tell us how you got into the shrooms.
Well, everything started on early May Day, and my daughter got some strawberries for her school lunch. Yeah. And she complained that these were nice on the outside, but they were rotten on the inside, so they were probably being sprayed with something. So everything started with the idea of them being able to produce strawberries and vegetables and anything indoors. But I always had this hobby with the mushrooms, and obviously the production of mushrooms is so much cheaper than what it will be with any type of other produce. So we figured out a new model that was coming in from America that was called the unicorn model, which was a way to grow things indoors. And we started in just a simple garage. And then it went on from there, really. And we started this in May of 2019, and today we are involved with 16 universities, and I have lost count of all the professors we are cooperating with. So we figured out some really nice stuff about mushrooms, and hopefully this is going to change the future for everyone.
Fantastic. So there is a lot of interest from a broad variety of, let's say, people about mushrooms and that its potential.
Yeah, because now the mushroom, we have to start somewhere, and that is to understand the fact that mushrooms is in its own kingdom. It's not the same as the plant kingdom or the animal kingdom. As a fact, it's more similar to the animal kingdom and us humans than it is to plants. So they contain some properties that is very useful to humans, especially medicinal. Obviously, everyone knows about penicillin, and that is a very good medicinal mushroom. But there's so many other types, and every year, just here in Norway, we find around 30 to 50 different new species every year, and we don't know anything about them. So, wow. In this genre, there's so little science, especially finances towards science in this department. And now, recent years, people have really understood the potentials if we go into this kingdom. And obviously, if I ask you the question, what do you think happens to all the trees that falls over during any storm? They will be decomposed by the mushrooms and turned into the best soil there is. So if we are looking into the nature, we're going to figure out that the best compost you can use is the same as the nature produce. So in our production, we produce a certain type of mushroom that we call the saprophytic mushrooms. That means they grow out of wood. They decompose the cellulose and lignin in wood. This is turned into very special sugars that is very useful for plant growth. So it just turned into a coincidence, really, but we started with a big contamination, and we were supposed to throw this in the garbage, and that was so expensive. So that turned very quickly into a compost science project with a close farmer. And out of the coincidence, we figured out that this is amazing fertilizer. So,
do you believe in coincidences?
well, you know, the more I understand about mushrooms, I understand that very little is coincidence. So there probably might be some intelligence in it. So turn me over to understanding that, but it's very obvious. From there, I asked, you know, the science department at Høgskolen i Innlandet here in Norway at Hamar, if they had some data on it. I just suggested that you should come and see the results we are getting from this, and that this potentially can be a huge game changer, which it is. So now we are applying for a big science project for all of Europe and here in Scandinavia, and also a regional in Norway. So we're into a lot of science projects now with these techniques.
Cool. So how fast does it process like a mushroom, like for example turning these fields into something that can produce something well?
Yeah,
you know, like a field with the grassed fields for animals.
Yeah. You see, there is, you know, first we have to maybe get a complete picture of the whole problem.
Yeah.
And that is to understand artificial fertilizers in the first place. This is something that came after the Second World War. And not many know this, but obviously it came out of all the production of gunpowder. And they didn't know what to use of it. So then they gave all the ammonia into artificial fertilizers. And well knowing that if you do the first nitrogen particle, which is the ammonia, that is very, very harmful for all the bacteria and microbiome. And that way you were able to then start with what we today call the monoculture, because you would kill off any other plant or any other organism, and then you were able to produce one certain produce without any contaminants. Obviously, this kills off every type of living organism in the soil, and it also turns into leakage each year. So for a farmer that's been doing this for 30, 40 years, at some point their field will be a desert. So that's where we started the problem. How quickly can we build up the microbiome and be able to get some living soil again from the help from mushrooms? And it turns out that if you use these mushrooms, they are already live, and within just a few months, they go and create a new microbiome. What they are created for in nature. So it's just a huge resource that everyone should look into and understand, because this is probably going to change a lot for everyone. And especially for organic farming, because they already have usually a change with animals on top of soil to create enough life under soil. So the problem about, let's say, having pigs or chickens or whatever, that compost has to be burned for 3 years before they, let's say, can produce potatoes. But with the mushrooms, that can be decomposed in only 6 months. And just out of significant math, you will get then 300% more production in an organic model.
So how, just to compare it, like cost-wise to, for example, like fertilizer, which we know now is insanely expensive, and so how much would okay, we have to have probably let's say an acre, just to say something, let more like all the other like what's the cost of the mushroom to fertilize, and how would you do it? Like would you grind it up and spread it out, or does it live if you?
Yeah, so there are different applications for this. Very much dependent on the severeness of the problem. But very easily, everyone can do this at home, really, and it will happen by itself on the ground. But as we do something called enzymatic saccharification. It's a very hard word to say, but that means every time the mushrooms decompose the material, it usually turns that energy into mushrooms, which gives us a type of a cycle. And for each time that is done, it turns the material into more and more advanced sugars and nutrients. So in order for us to produce enough, it's very cheap production, but it's just a question of enough storage. So hopefully we are looking into possibilities of investments and things like that, so people understand that if we could produce enough, this is much cheaper than any other type of fertilizer, because the mushrooms, they already decompose organic materials, and then that gives us the possibility of using every other waste. There can be waste from, let's say, vegetable production, it could be waste from grain production, waste from coffee cafeterias and whatnot. What we are using is that we go to these specialist sawmills that usually tends to produce things with oak. So this is only their waste material. So we get it for free, actually, but there's a production to this that's around 6 months. So we're getting it down to a cost around a couple, 1 kroner to 2 kroner somewhere per kilo, and it's very cheap. Artificial fertilizers is around 12.50 now in Norway, so we're talking about a significant drop in expenses for the farmer also.
That's amazing. Like, is it how far along are you in like figuring out how?
This winter is a time where we are going to measure now from application now in the autumn, and look now in the spring how far we have come, and there's going to be analysis on this and whatnot. So the numbers are not here, but I've seen the reaction to nature before, so I know this will work. But we are going to look into the actual numbers and look how quickly it can do the nitrogen cycle. And if we are looking into 6 months, then everyone has the possibility of just using the excess waste of any production, really, called grøntgjødsling in Norge, and then have it decomposed already to the springtime, so you get the seasonal change every year. Vektskifte på norsk. We have also another project which is very, very exciting. At the same time as the pandemic started, there was some coincidence that several of these production farms for biological animal feed, they burnt down, which obviously increased the prices severely. And a few farmers close by, they called me and said that we have to give up the pigs. We can't afford animal feed anymore. Would it be possible to try and give the pigs some mushrooms? So we did that, and we also saw some amazing results in that department, because when we give the pigs the waste materials we get, then they only eat the mycelium. And if you think of a wild boar, they have this big tooth, right? So they dig up all the roots to eat the mycelium underneath the roots. It's just a misconception that they eat all the roots. What they really like is the mycelium. And mycelium can contain between 40 to 60% proteins. So on a mycelium diet, these pigs were growing like what we've never seen before.
So that I would prefer that over bugs and crickets.
Yeah, right. And not only that, but you saw a quality to the meat that was astonishing, Michelin quality.
Yeah, right.
So amazing results, and this also prevents the use of any antibiotics and things like that, because when they eat, well, it was 50% of the feed were mushroom, and the other part was vegetables from the farm and apples and grains and things. But however, the increase in weight was so quick that this is going to be at least close to what conventional farming is. So taking the organic farmer up to a conventional level just with mushrooms that is organically grown, completely pure without anything, is going to be a really huge game changer.
Wow. I'm just thinking, like, if this, like, say, catches on, like production wise, do you have, like, how big growing quarters do you have? And for example, if one should produce mushrooms for pigs feed, mushroom for fertilizing, mushroom for everything, do you need big
No, not at all. But for a regular farmer, you have a barn, right? So that would be more than sufficient enough to grow.
So you just grow it yourself, actually, right? You just
yeah. In storsäck, big bag, you can grow anything. Well, it depends what you want to grow. I recommend you grow some very, very aggressive types. That's easier to grow in a home environment in comparison to us professionals. We obviously have a factory that used to be a cheese factory. People don't really think of it, but eating cheese, you are really eating mushrooms that decompose some milk. That's why it's called the blue mold cheese and white mold cheese and red mold cheese and such. So here in Norway, this used to be the cheese factory for a make called Bro Castello.
Yeah.
So it's very, very useful for us because it's very same preferences for molds that it is for any other mushroom. So it's easier for us. What we're looking into is getting some money for a really huge factory. That would be nice, but these times the financial market is completely broke.
It's not the best time to
not
do anything,
now.
actually.
But at least there's a lot of work to do with the science, and probably when that science is finished, a lot of interest is coming.
So the production, so this fertilizing thing is more on the, like, say, on the exploring phase of it.
Yeah.
But you already produce food for high-end restaurants and for medicinal purposes, right? So tell us a little bit about the food, mushrooms, and what is. Many of the subscribers to my channel is because of Josh, who is in the comments here. I see him. Thank you, brother. Don't eat meats.
Yeah.
And I have heard that you can get mushrooms to kind of actually substitute any kind of meat, fish, white, red meat, everything, texture, taste.
More or less, yeah.
Yeah.
Now we have a lot better words for mushrooms in English. Let's say chicken of the woods. I would bet that any person that gets that in a Caesar salad would bet their life that they are eating chicken.
Really?
You cannot guess that that's a mushroom at all. But it depends. These kind of mushrooms we are growing is the mushrooms that grows out of trees. So what's special about those is that they contain a lot higher amount of proteins. let's say in the lion's mane mushroom, we are looking into the highest levels. We are looking into 41.1% proteins of 100 grams. So that is almost twice as much as meat. Now, the problem about going fully vegetarian or vegan is that you will get to struggle getting hold of enough vitamin B12, and you know, the mushrooms also have that. So
they do have B12 there?
Yeah. So it's the perfect substitute, and really the only substitute that contains B12 naturally without proteins from animal. So also the mushrooms is so similar to humans. So there's another trick for everyone that wants to know, is that in our skin we got this substance called ergosterol, and if that comes in contact with UV rays, it turns into vitamin D3. So in order to increase your vitamin D3 levels, you can harvest your mushroom and dry it in the sun for 8 hours. And a shiitake mushroom picked straight off the substrate would have around 100 units of vitamin D3. But after 8 hours in the sun, it has 48,000 units of vitamin D3.
And this has been measured
scientifically, yeah.
I have Josh in the comments, and he's saying it will only contain B12 if grown in cobalt-rich soils, and the bacteria converts it. Would you say that's a?
No, that's not good.
Okay.
We grow everything on wood, which is usually oak, and sometimes a mix between alder and oak.
I'm sorry, in kind of not sawdust, but
yeah, there are
fleece.
kind of shavings.
Shavings, yeah.
Yeah. So in the center of the log, usually the mushrooms never eat the center of the log. It's very important to have only the shavings of the outer parts of the log. That's where the nutrients are for the mushroom.
Okay. I have another question from Glenn. He's asking if this is does this go for all mushrooms? Like they're probably no, right?
Not for all mushrooms.
No.
So these are what we call gourmet mushrooms. So they are the highest nutrient dense mushrooms there is. We produce around, I think we're up to 17 different species we're producing regularly. So they are all different, but lion's mane is certainly one of the most nutrient dense mushrooms there is.
Lion's mane. You know, we could for educational purposes show the mushrooms from your website. Actually, I'm just now scrolling through some of them. Rosa Östershop, pink oyster, black pearl, blue oyster mushroom, hen of the woods, maitake.
Yes,
and they're beautiful.
Maybe the most delicious mushroom.
The maitake one.
Maitake one is maybe the most delicious mushroom there is on the planet.
Do you know, like when they use it in gourmet food, like is it different from mushroom to mushroom, like how they incorporate it in a dish? Is it like a substitute, or it has different?
Well, some has it as a condiment to the dish, but some has it as, you know, it's very, very much more convenient for the chef. That, let's say you get the table of people and you got one vegan. There's so many varieties of mushrooms you can choose from, so a chef can then easily just substitute the protein for the dish and substitute it for a mushroom instead of let's say a lobster or whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
It depends, you know.
Yeah. And did you have kind of, let's say, old literature and books and things to kind of show you who did what of the different mushrooms?
Yeah, well, I used to read all the books, but somewhere along the line, you've read the same things many times, and when you come to this part of the mushroom kingdom, that well, there's all these things we don't know. So I'm more into that now. So actually, I'm being asked if I can write a book now. So
Wow.
yeah.
Cool. I'm gonna buy it. Just skipping back to, because Josh had another comment regarding the cobalt. He says cobalt is actually found on the barks of trees, so this would be why. He's talking about this cobalt. Is cobalt, in your experience, is cobalt important factor in? Is it something you have noticed, or
we haven't? Well, we have done all types of analysis, and we don't get any cobalt usually. No.
Okay.
However, what we get is that they usually make kitchen shelves or whatever with the oak. So what they want is the core part, and we get all the shavings from anything else, right? So it will contain a lot of bark, I guess. Yeah. So that's probably why. But usually, if you see these mushrooms, they don't eat the bark; they come out of the bark. So they eat on the outer parts of the hardwood. So they usually go between the bark and the wood, and then go through the bark. So.
There's a question about was it any kind of special method or something to confirm that there was B12 in some of these mushrooms?
Yeah, well, there's a new book out which you talked about. I think it's called The Medicinal Mushroom Kingdom. And they would see all the analysis of all of these mushrooms.
Okay, interesting.
So I guess this is written by a very famous vegan also. So I don't remember the name of the author. A friend of mine had the book. But that is very interesting reading. And all the measurements on all the other nutrients as well. So it seems it's very important what you grow the mushrooms on. Very different if you grow it on birch in comparison to oak or in comparison to different things. So we see different measurements in comparison to how you grow it.
This changes. Does what you grow it on change the traits
Texture.
and let's say change the mushroom? Does it get a different capability or taste different, or?
Yeah, it can taste a bit different. I guess, let's say if you grow the blue oyster mushrooms on straw in comparison to hardwood, it's very different.
Yeah.
So you get some more meaty texture. It's much more firm and dense with hardwoods, and it will be with straw. However, with straw, it can become a lot bigger, and yeah. So there's different benefits with growing different things. Usually the market is growing from straw because it's a very cheap substrate. But we believe that, these mushrooms usually in the nature, we will always find them on wood logs. So that's what we grow.
Yeah. Just for the vegans listening, if you were to recommend, which mushroom would you recommend for for a replacement of meat, and which has maybe B12 and protein for all that?
Yeah, I would at least suggest lion's mane, because there you get a very famous medicinal mushroom and a gourmet mushroom in the same dish.
Yeah.
It's then certified as a nootropic mushroom, which means that it prevents deteriorating of your nervous system, and it can provide some substances that can help you with producing what's called NGF, nerve growth factor. It's a very, very good mushroom. It has sort of the same texture as maybe king crab. Very delicious. Lots of proteins, lots of iron, lots of magnesium. It's very delicious. So everyone should try that out. And if you want to go more mainstream with a mushroom that's more cheap and maybe more easily accessible in your area, is the king oyster mushroom.
King oyster.
Yeah.
So can I ask, like, let's say, for example, lion's mane, what would a kilo of lion's mane run you?
It's around $40 here in Norway.
$40.
But you know, in the high-end shops in Oslo, you get them for $120 per kilo. So depends. But from our factory, we sell them for $40. Yeah.
Let me see if I can share that. I just had your what's that? I was wanting to share your pictures on your website, but I can't seem to make that happen. So we will just go back to, yeah. So and do you have an outlet yourself? Like you sell mushrooms from your production facilities?
Yeah, we sell from the factory, but most of our mushrooms is ordered by hotels and restaurants and high-end shops in Oslo.
You have a variety of ways you can buy this mushroom, right? You can get it in a like a syringe.
Yeah, well, that's if you want to grow the mushrooms
yourself.
Sell a lot of articles so the hobbyists can grow them themselves. But we, as mushrooms, we out of the lion's mane, we produce a lot of products. So we've come in conflict with the authorities on this because we produce the lion's mane. So we produced a part of the production which is called the mycelium, and that is not allowed here in Norway or in Europe.
Okay.
Because it's seen as a medicinal applicant. So we used to produce a very potent product with it, with the mycelium part. And now we're producing more of fermented things with lion's mane. It's fermented drinks with lacto acid bacteria that's decomposed the mushrooms and withdrawn all the nutrients. And yeah.
At least
it went away. Yeah.
No. Did you get a picture of the lion's mane now or not?
No, it's completely black.
Okay. It was worth a try. What happened?
Well, it's a special mushroom. It's kind of different to other mushrooms. It has these hairs that it produces spores from, and it's a very special mushroom. Here in Norway, it's red listed, so if you find it in nature, you're not allowed to touch it. So it's kind of a very sought after mushroom, and I guess around the biggest cities in Norway, you get an easy access to them.
When it comes to the medicinal part, do you deliver, like you sell your food shrooms to the restaurants? Who buy your medicinal shrooms?
Yeah, I would say that out of 10 customers, 8 will want the medicinal mushroom. Yeah.
All right.
So a lot of the private market, there's a way of saying this in an easy way, and that is that there's been a lot of misinformation, and it's been a lot of disinformation. A lot of information has been withheld. But in fact, there's much evidence to back that a lot of the substances in these mushrooms has been a part of big pharma for a long time. And you see all the patent laws, when you have reached 30 years, usually the patent is over and then everything is revealed. So obviously, in a lot of medicinal pills, there's already substances from mushrooms. So I guess a lot of this has been held down by the big pharma community. So if a lot of people knew more about these mushrooms, they wouldn't need that much medicine. In very short, reading a lot about it, everyone should understand that some mushrooms are made to kill you and some mushrooms are made to heal you. And it's not wise to be only afraid of a mushroom just because you don't understand it. So I would suggest that most people try mushrooms, not magic mushrooms, but the nootropic mushroom of lion's mane is the same effect as a magical mushroom. However, there's no kind of high or anything to it. So,
no fun.
Yeah, no, well, magical mushrooms are also fun, but you know, it's not as useful if you, let's say, are in a working environment or something.
No. But speaking of that, of course, I would assume is you're not allowed to grow those. But there is a lot of focus and work towards using psychedelics in general, actually, in therapeutic forms. But those kind of produce you're not allowed to handle.
Well, the thing is that in Norway now it's become so extreme that, you know, we're charged by the authorities now a few months ago because we made the lion's mane and another mushroom called turkey tail so potent that they refused us to continue. We didn't stop the production. So, you know, there's been a way to go to find the ways we can travel, but they admitted, at least in the same meeting, that it's not prohibited to sell liquid mycelium or help people to grow magic mushrooms themselves. But it's not allowed to produce the mushroom and distribute the mushrooms.
Because that was news to me, did they say that people are allowed to kind of grow their own magic mushrooms?
Yeah, so the spores or the mycelium is not illegal.
No.
So what is illegal is the actual mushroom and distributing the mushroom.
Okay.
So yeah.
So you mentioned
it would be the same as a cannabis seed is allowed, but not the plant.
No, exactly. It's I've heard people say that it's quite hard work to keep a marijuana plantation going, but it's easier to produce mushrooms, I would guess. Like not, or how's the requirements regarding, you know, cleanliness and temperatures,
you know,
moisture.
Now we're live streaming, so I can always say that if someone needs help in this department, we produce some special bags where everything is sterilized and everything is in one bag. And the only thing you need to do is inoculate the bag with either spores or liquid cultures. And everything is grown in the bag and you don't need any special equipment at all. So it couldn't be easier anymore. So everyone can grow the mushrooms. And it doesn't matter which type. You can grow any type in the same way. So yeah. So
no special requirements regarding facilities, temperatures, moisture.
Well, you know, if you want to grow in a bigger type of environment, you should need a humidifier, maybe, possibly some good ventilation, so you get a big airflow in the room, and you sort of mimic autumn conditions, right?
Right.
So in our facility, we run 15 degrees Celsius and around 90% humidity. So, and then we pump in This is around 60 square meters, but it's 5 meters high, so it's quite a big room. And we pump in 2,500 cubic meters of HEPA filtered air into the room.
Right.
So this creates very like the weather you would have in September, October, November, sort of. Yeah.
So does that to keep that for you in your facility, to keep that state, is it I'm just thinking with today's energy prices, how is that going along?
Yeah, well, it's insane, man. It's just ridiculous. Well, I don't think the consumption we have is very low, but the prices has increased so much that is, for December we had more than we had for the whole of 2022. So I mean, for a whole 12 times the price in only a few months, increase in electricity bills it's become increasingly problematic. Yeah.
And it's something everybody's struggling with. We're not going to go over to those kind of problems quite yet anyway, but yeah, it's horrible, the electricity situation, but hopefully that
as production goes, I would say that if you want to produce your own produce of mushrooms, this will most likely be the most cheapest production you can ever have, right? So you don't need a lot of heat, you don't need a lot of lights as you would with plants, so it's a lot cheaper than plants, but anyway, it's quite expensive when you have to sterilize the substrate and you have to keep on a very high ventilation and things. So yeah.
So what's the kind of, you're looking into this fertilizer situation, this is kind of exploration, any other potentials for mushrooms or different variety of mushrooms for any other?
Well, there's a lot of things we're involved in now because there's so many other companies that's started into this business, and we try and help as many as we can. So we're helping this guy that's developing constructional parts with mycelium.
Okay, creating constructional parts with mycelium. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, like Leka block substitute for things like that.
So like a building block?
Yeah, and he also has a project, I think, with building panels. And what's very amazing with the mycelium is that it also does several things at the same time. So it's a very good audio barrier, it's a good fire barrier, and a good material that never decomposes. So it's very strong. The problem would be that it's a very not cost-effective production. So I guess these guys, if they manage to get the capital in, probably will be something. But as of now, there's so many projects. Another project we're into is plastic eating mycelium.
I've heard about that.
And mass producing a liquid culture that you can spray onto plastic waste areas, and it will decompose the petroleum parts of the plastic. So there's a lot of exciting scientific work that needs to be done. Also,
you mentioned early on in the chat that there's not much money being put towards mushrooms and its possibilities, and it hasn't changed, or is it starting to still?
Not really, not political anyway. So we're not received any money from what we call Innovation Norway.
Nothing.
Nothing. So yeah, so it's very, I just have to say, it's very corrupt actually. So we've seen a lot of that. So but in the scientific community, we've reached a lot of interest. So we've been saved by that, actually.
That's at least something. And God willing, that will be, if they kind of see the potential and they're not bought off by somebody else, then that can be positive for the mushroom future.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see the way forward. You know, I'm just thinking about where I live. You know, I'm living in the rural areas. Is that what you call it? På bygda. And there's a lot. There's several farms here, right? But nobody's kind of. They live on the farm. They don't do anything else with the farm. They, at best, they are renting out the fields for grazing animals, right? Beite. So I'm like from the sidelines trying to talk a little bit about maybe producing some food, you know, trying to get some interest from the villagers. But in that case, like you were mentioning, you know, we should turn around the fields, at least every field who's not been used for grazing animals, to kind of prepare some growing of food in the near future.
Yeah.
If not because we have to. So yeah. I lost my train of thought. The fields. Yeah, so that would be amazing, you know, to have some solution like you can just put the mushrooms on. I don't know how, but then could it be like in a solution, like in a liquid solution, you can just spray around?
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah,
right.
But what we usually do is that we grow mycelium grains, and then you break this up, and you can have it in a cedar spreader.
So how much mushroom would it take for, like, say, 100 by 100 meters?
I mean, what you use is that you use what we call a spawn. So the question would rather be, how much organic substrate can you put onto the field, and then mix with the spawn of the mycelium, and then that will grow out of everything. So what we usually do is that we have a blend of wood chips from oak, alder, and birch, and then we produce mycelium in this big bags of grains. The farmer just breaks up this and puts it into the same machine that you usually spread the seeds with. Yeah. And they drive over it. And then harving, I don't know what that's in English, just tilling that into the soil. And this will then spread, and each grain will then have this perfect mycelium ring that joins every other ring around, and within a week or two, you maybe have the whole field white, completely white.
Completely white.
Yeah.
And then that needs to stay like that and do its job, let's say.
Yeah.
So you would have the mushroom on, let's say, like I said, we have these animals grazing. You would just put it on the grass as it is.
Yeah.
Not Turner, nothing.
As with animal waste, we usually tend to then bring other type of mushrooms into the picture, more from the family of mycorrhiza, which means that they decompose and joins other plants with the root network. And they are usually quicker to decompose animal manure than what the saprotrophic mushrooms is. So a combination of two different mushrooms seems to be the best option if you want to do plant production. Just to have grass to be able to graze, then you don't need both mushrooms, and then you only need a mushroom that can decompose everything into the soil all the time.
So what you're saying, like you were talking about earlier, that the kunstgjødsel fertilizer, it ruins the soil. It fucks it up bad. So, but and it's lacking in all kinds of ways, right? So by just having this mushroom on top of grass or whatever is there, you will start to actually, and this will be kind of a, let's say, a prima soil of one of the, yeah.
Now let's see the other way around, because if you are a conventional farmer and you've been spreading this poison and Roundup and whatnot on your field for years, and let's say you want to change, or you can't afford to have artificial fertilizers and whatnot, so you want to change to be an organic farmer. How will you be able to bring all those contaminants out of the soil? So I guess the Swedes has the word for mushrooms, which translates into sponge, right? Swamp, which then translates that, well, it will suck up everything. So then you don't want the mushroom there. You just put it on just to suck up all the waste materials and then get the mushrooms away. And then you clean the field.
Is that a different way?
That's a different application, yeah.
Yeah, or a different mushroom as well? Or
no, the same mushroom.
Same mushroom.
So it's about healing nature as well. So for a farmer that's been using artificial fertilizer, you know, when they stop, that's when you see the problem. Because when you don't provide any more nutrients for the field, there's no natural life there. You probably see that even grass won't grow. And the state of these fields, when you see them, is a horrible sight. And there's a lot of very worried farmers that has also, as the same we talked about, the electricity bills there in Norway, but also the bills for artificial fertilizers have increased by 400 or 500%. So the necessity for finding a solution or a substitute for artificial fertilizer is immensely important.
Yeah, let's hope. You don't have to hope; it will happen sooner or later.
Sooner or later, yeah.
Sooner or later.
So we're charging on this year. So this year, we're probably in the end of it. We will know a lot more, and hopefully this will come into scientific papers, and everyone should be able to read about it. Yeah.
Sverre Bjerkås has a question. Why does it have to be sterile when growing due to mold?
Yeah. So the hardest part about growing mushrooms is to grow only one mushroom. Because, you know, you have simpler organisms like yeasts or molds that easily grows on every type of substrate you want to provide for your mushrooms. So in order to be successful, we sterilize the substrate. So there's no other competition inside the substrate before we inoculate. So when we inoculate, there's only room for the type of mycelium we want to grow. That's why we sterilize.
I just realized it's maybe something we should have started with, but anyway, walk us through the process of actually. You just mentioned also the process of growing a mushroom, like what do you start with, what does it turn into, and how is the process?
Now I can start by the way we do it is that we usually cooperate with professional pickers of mushrooms, and some of them send us specimens. So in the very first beginning, we take a sample from the mushroom. We grow them on this agar plates, and then we look for a certain aggressiveness to the mycelium, and we pick the most aggressive ones, and we grow them further on in several batches.
Okay. So
in the end of that, we end up with a very, very aggressive mycelium. This is put into liquid nutrients, and then we break it apart and have it grow in a liquid solution. Then in our factory, we start by growing it on grains. So we boil some grains, and then we sterilize it into these bags, which has this injection ports, so you can inoculate with. And then we use a syringe to inoculate with the mycelium on the grains. When this has cultivated, each of those grains is a spreading point for the mushroom. So out of one bag of grains, we spread that into 12 bags of oak sawdust. So this is the way we produce it.
Mm.
After it's cultivated, you see the mycelium takes part of the whole oak sawdust. Then it can't come any further, so that's the point where we cut the bag, and the only entrance point to oxygen is where you cut the bag, and it acts just like in nature, just like through the bark of a tree. It produces these mushrooms. And the most efficient way of doing this is to pick the first flushes very young, because if the mycelium never gets to spread its spores, it's intelligent that way that it then feels it didn't reproduce. So if you pick it early, it will produce another mushroom and another mushroom and another mushroom. So our record for lion's mane, for example, is 8 flushes from one simple bag. So it's very efficient.
So what would that convert to in like a weight, like a kilo or?
Yeah, around a kilo to 1.3 kilos. Yeah.
Right. That we can provide for dinner several days.
Yeah, I mean, for a person that wants to live, let's say, off grid, this is probably the best way to produce any harvest, because you use your waste materials, you get then the mushroom, you don't need any special equipment. And you get several harvests for anything you grow it on. So, I mean, this is the best way for anyone that's not able to do some hunting or farming.
Mm-hmm.
This is easy for a handicapped person to do or anything. So.
Fantastic. What was, yeah. You mentioned, because we had talked 10 minutes before we went on today, you mentioned something about you I won't say, I don't know if actually started, but you're claiming a new term, poison-free,
Yeah,
ecological or
gift-free ökologisk. Yeah. Well, as in Norway, we have this set of rules that, you know, sets up what's organic produced and not. And as of lately, they changed rules. So some people can claim that they produce organic, but it's actually not. So in order for us to make a barrier for that, we want to tell everyone that we produce everything we do completely without any preservatives or any chemicals or anything. So we combined with some farmers, and we are then going to introduce our production done through the mushroom techniques, which makes the produce very, very healthy and nutritious. So we're going to call it gift-free ökologisk in Norway, which translates into poison-free organic food. Yeah.
Mm. That's much needed.
Yeah, I mean, you at least here in Norway, we have a very short season for any plant growth. So now a year, you know, everything is more or less imported.
Mm.
And you can just imagine, you know, each handling company of that cucumber from Spain has to do some type of prevention of getting all their produce destroyed. So out of insurance reasons, they will probably spray that cucumber 10 times before it reached Norway. And eating all of this, obviously, you know, you spray it with something that prevents bacteria and mushrooms, and you put this into your stomach, and your total microbiome is destroyed. So I mean, it's really, really important for people to understand that the fuel they are running on has to be without all the biochemistry. It's very, very important.
Mm.
So, I mean, a bell pepper is not necessarily healthy just because it looks nice and came from another country. So being able to provide a good set of vegetables all through year here in Norway is really important. So we're setting up storage for vegetables down underground, jordkjellere, which is called.
Mm.
So we're gonna provide a lot of vegetables in the autumn.
Fantastic. We've done an hour, Steven.
You've done an hour. You heard
We've done
enough
an
about mushrooms, yeah?
No, actually, no. I don't know. Do you think?
No.
Is there something? Is there something you feel you haven't touched upon that could be interesting for people to know?
Well, I mean, if someone wants to know anything about mushrooms, we provide growing kits and growing courses. You can contact us on our website and see if we have something that fits your project.
I will share the link in the chat to your website. There's already somebody who has asked where you're located.
Yeah, we're located at Mårud, just outside of Oslo, 45 minutes outside of Oslo, towards Kongsvinger.
Yeah.
But it's not as far. It's in the middle of nowhere in a place called Disenå. Yeah.
That's where you have the production facilities and everything.
Yeah.
And the outlet.
Yeah. We also sell through a lot of shops in Oslo. So amongst them is Møller & Sylvia, Havens, Georg A. Nielsen, and shops like that. Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much for that introduction to the mushrooms. I'm gonna, before you go, because I know you're I guess we both are a bit I don't know what the right word would be. Yeah, the state of things, state of society, state of what's your, how are you getting along without
I mean,
wanting to kill somebody?
We're past absurdity 2 years ago, and now we're in a loony farm of some sort. We're in the middle of a genocide. We're in the middle of a huge financial crisis. So it's really going to be exciting to see where we're going from here. But I believe love will win in the end. I believe that the duality of the recent, political sphere is going to die off. No one needs them. I don't believe that people wants to be governed forever. But I also believe that there has to be some reset also. So I believe everything happens for a reason. I believe this is the time to understand that we need to change. This is the time that we need to understand that we need to cooperate. This is the time to understand that competition is not sensible for a society.
Thank you. As I should have said it myself.
Yeah, we agree on that.
Yeah, we agree on that. Yeah. No, it's been a pleasure. We could maybe, somewhere down the line do it again, because things can have, something can have changed.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you to whoever was here listening.
Cheers.
We'll be back. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.